Hello, good morning or afternoon or night or whatever time it is where you are. It's morning where I'm at. I'm going to continue this OS dev here. You may be wondering why I have the memory map open. So part of the key controls that I want to do for the text editor involve control key combos, like Control-R, Control-S I wanted to use for returning to the kernel or saving to disk in the text editor. So one way to tell if a control key is pressed, because I had to look this up, I didn't know how to tell if you press the control key or not, but one way is by getting data at either using a BIOS interrupt or getting data at the BIOS data area. So there is a BIOS interrupt int16 for, I guess, keyboard stuff. AH2 reads the keyboard flags. And the keyboard flags is the BIOS data area at 4017 or 417 in hex. That's why I have this open. So BIOS data area, when your OS boots, you get the boot sector and everything. BIOS data area BDA is loaded to memory 400 to 4FF, 256 bytes. And that byte 417, well, there's a word 2 bytes, but these are the keyboard state flags. So if we look at the keyboard flags at 417 and 418, bit 2, or the third least significant bit. So if this was set on, it'd be 4, right? In binary, but this means the control key was depressed. So if you press the control key in something, you can check if bit 2 is on or set, and that'll tell you if they press control for the last key that they entered. So there's a BIOS interrupt N16H, AH equals 2, and it just copies that into AL. So I have a little test program for that here. I made control test. Just a key loop. So we're doing int16 AH0 to get a key, and then if you press control, it should set the BIOS data state flag. So I check that here with AH2 int16. I'm doing BT, which is bit test. This tests if that specific bit is on or not. So you need at least a 16-bit register, 16 or 32. You can't do it with 8-bit, unfortunately, but BT, it copies a given bit from the register to the carry flags. Then you can test. If the carry flag is set or not. So if we do bit test AX2, this will test if that bit is set in AL, which would mean the control bit is set because that's bit 2. So then you do jump carry, means that bit is set because it was copied to the carry flag. That means control was pressed, otherwise it was not pressed. I'm just printing an N or a Y, depending. So if we do QEMU for this test here, control test, need to specify it's a floppy, of course. So if I just press something like an S, it prints an N, but if I do control S, it prints a Y because that specified bit would be set. So J, control J, I, control I, so on and so forth. So that's an easy way to do it. Another way is just copying the data within the keyboard state flags manually yourself. So since it's at 417, we can just copy that into AL and then we can test if the bit is set without using the BIOS interrupt. So I have that as well. That is, control test keyboard flag. So I'm XORing AH, which I don't really need to do that, but I did it anyway for some reason. And then you're just copying the byte at 417 into AL, and then you can bit test for control. So I should have also had that as a binary. I do. And we can try the same thing. So S is an N, control S is a Y, J, control J, so on and so forth. So those are two ways to do that. So I'm going to use this method, so I don't need to use the BIOS interrupt. I'm going to put that in the text editor to test if the control key was pressed and go, from there for specific keybinds. So let's do that. Let's put whatever we were doing. So instead of escape, let's compare bytes. Put AH into there. Let's compare byte to R for return to kernel. I guess we'll check if control was pressed and then go to end editor. Sure, we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll jump back to input character loop. Let's just put that down here. So let's copy copy into AL the byte at 417. X from the BIOS data area, so the bit should be set, so we can do BT for bit test AL2. And we can see if it's carry or not. So we'll jump not carry, I guess, to print the character. Am I printing by default for this? I am, right? Oh, print character text mode. There we go. Yeah, print character text mode. So let's move this code down below here. Call it print character. Let's call it print character text editor, just for confusion's sake. Let's try and put it down here. I'll have to move some other stuff around, that's okay. Check if control key was pressed. This is left or right control. You can specify if you want the left or right control key by looking at the byte in 418 and testing bits, but just for any generic control key, you can test bit 2 and 417. So if the carry flag was not set, the control was not pressed. So we'll go to print character text editor. If the carry flag was set, then it was pressed. So we will jump in editor. There we go. Jump not carry, we'll go down here, we'll print out what they did, we'll move one character forward, putting that down here. And at the end of this, we'll still jump and go back to the character loop. Is there anything else I need to change? Hopefully not. All right, we'll put in saving. Saving will be Control S. We'll put that there. So let's see if Control R works to return to the kernel. Invalid size, I forgot, I have to use 16-bit AX. There we go. Oh, I just changed the move. BTAX. There we go. Alright, so new file, other file, so testing. Well, that's not good, is it? Yeah, if they didn't do this, let's just jump to print character. There we go, testing, so let's do Control R. That does not work. Oh, AH is in scan code. Yeah, I need to check AL. Scan code, yeah, will not be R. Let's just change this. AL. Alright, Control R. That still does not work. Interesting. That's never gonna go. Okay, compare to R. Oh, lowercase. Sorry about that. It's not gonna be uppercase unless we did Shift as well. Control Shift R, that would have been true, but Control R, that would not. It'd be lowercase r. Nope, still doesn't. Interesting. Okay, so why does it not work now? Let's do jump carry. So let's do that. Just put this up there. X for keybinds, so move it there. Test 2. So we might want to save off. If we do it like this, we might want to save the last character they put in as well. Which is more code, and that's okay. Save input character. Save input character into AL, we'll move the byte, we'll test it. If they pressed R, we'll return to the kernel. Well, if the key was pressed, we'll compare what they put in to R. And if so, we'll return to the kernel. So we'll do jump equal end editor. Okay. makes a little bit more sense, and it's a little shorter as well. Otherwise, we'll go to print character. Let's move this down here. AH0E, move back into AL what they put in, save input character, then we'll push AX, then we'll do that. Alright, so we'll check for control key immediately. Undefined symbol, yeah, that's true. Save input character. Alright. So Control-R. Yeah, it just prints. Interesting. I need to compare right after this, that's why. Okay, jump carry. If the control key was pressed, then we'll check what editor binds they did. Okay. Control key binds. Yeah, we'll do that, and then we'll move this stuff under there. Let's put another iteration there. So we'll do check, control, key binds. Can't type. Alright, and under here we'll check this stuff, so 2D. Control S we'll put under there as well. It'll just be for S. Save file to disk. And it won't matter because we'll jump back. Alright. So if they press Control, then we'll check if they pressed R, then we'll return to the kernel. So let's see what that does. Does that change it? Do I understand what I'm doing? Probably not. Control R. Nope. We can try it with int16AH2. Maybe it's an issue with this byte. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that'll do anything, but maybe it will. Control R does nothing. Wonder why. Maybe the BIOS data area has weird stuff going on for some reason. I don't know why it would, but maybe it does. Alright, tell you what we're going to do. We're going to check what 417 is. We'll call print hex, and then we're going to halt. Control R is FA. Okay, so I figured out some things that are different. Reading the byte was never changing. The byte wasn't really changing when I was just reading from the BIOS data area for the keyboard state flags. So I went back to AH2 and tested that a little bit, but I ended up just printing hex about what exactly we put in to see the exact scan coded input character. So if we put R, we get 1.3 for the scan code and 7.2 for the parent character. So Shift R should be capital R. It's 1.352, but Control R is 1.312 for the input character for some reason. But if I look at my old Stanislav page here, this correlates with what we're getting here. 1.372, 1.352, 1.312. So I guess it inputs the whole thing. I don't really know. I guess this is scan code and then character combos here for some reason. So if we do Alt, it should be 1.300. Alt R. Yeah. So, okay, I can check off this stuff though. I can just check when we go to control character keybinds or whatever. I can check if it's 1312 for a control R. And then I can check for control S will be 1F13. So, yeah, and that's right. So that's what I'm going to do to check these. go and hard set it. So I don't need to do this for right now to check control. But I will just check AX against 1312. I guess we'll do end editor if that's what they entered. 1312. Okay, otherwise we're gonna print stuff down here. So I'll just get rid of this for now. Control S will be 1F13, right? Yeah. F13. This will be Control S. We'll do that for saving, but we're not doing anything with that right now. So that should work. So R is an R, Shift R, Control R returns to the kernel. Okay, well, we'll just do that. We'll just compare the whole thing if it matches or not. That's easy enough. That's easier. We'll just do that. The other thing I changed was I made these lowercase just for when we're going into the menus so I don't have to hold Shift because I'm lazy. So if you go and create a new file, it's just C and then B or O. It's not capital B or O. I could make other constants for Control R and Control S, I suppose. Maybe I'll do that. Call it Control R. Maybe I can use the dash. I don't know. We'll do Control R. That's fine. It's 1312, and we'll do Control S. That'll be 1F13. So Control R and Control S. So what other stuff did I want to do for the text editor? Let's do, I guess, the other to-dos here. We'll put in like arrow key support similar to the hex editor. So arrow keys here. If they didn't press Control R or S, let's go to check. Well, let's see what we named it down here so we don't name it the same thing. Check nav keys is what I called it. So let's do check nav keys hex. Eventually I'm going to combine these things probably, maybe have a flag set or something that says, are we in the hex editor? Are we in the text editor? Which one are we in? Is it a 0 or 1 or whatever? I could probably have a flag do that and then do these controls appropriately instead of duplicating everything everywhere, but you know, I'm not doing that right now, so we'll just copy this stuff. All right, and then home and end. I guess we can copy all of it, doesn't really matter. Home and end, and then we'll do that. Let's copy all that. Check nav keys text. All right, we'll do it here. Check for arrow keys first. Left arrow key press text. Do all that. Otherwise, we'll jump to, this was print character, right? Print character text editor. Put that in place of here. So left arrow key pressed, text. Get next text character will be input character loop. That's what this is. To put it there, I guess. Okay. Change it for all the arrow keys. Should really learn how to save Vim macros, but I don't know how to do that yet. I can just repeat changes. Guess we'll move this stuff over. Change the indentation again, why not? Okay. And we don't have to jump on the end. Okay, so we need to put underscore text on the end of the other ones, all right. We'll do that. So left arrow key pressed. We'll compare to 0 or at least 1. We'll compare to 0, I guess. They can't move left if they're at 0, but they can if they're greater than 0. Otherwise, we'll just decrement it. We can move 1 byte at a time in text mode. That's the good stuff. 1 byte right, we'll compare to 79. That should be the limit. Well, it might be 80. We'll see. Instead of adding 3, we'll just increment the word. Okay, up arrow. And compare to 0, otherwise we'll subtract. This will be the amount of characters in the line. Well, we might have to do fancy things with Newline support, because Newline will break the current line. I want to break out the current line and go to the next one, right? But that would leave the rest of the line blank, and it wouldn't take up the full amount of space. So I'm not sure how many bytes to subtract or increase. We're moving up or down a line in this text mode right now, this text editor. Because the lines could be varying lengths depending on if you end it with a new line and go down. It's not going to end at the 80 character limit every time. It could end somewhere in the middle. So let's just increment, decrement word. We'll go back to that later. Do a to-do here. It'll move the cursor, but it's not going to move the data right now. This will compare, yep, 24 is fine. To do on that, okay. If they pressed home, oh yeah, because I had to do fancy stuff. Home will just move us to 0, so I'll have to do fancy stuff for DI as well. I won't have to divide by 3, I'll just move cursor X bytes back, is all I have to do. So if we're at character 40 in the line, I want to move 40 bytes back, I guess. I guess we'll do that. Yeah, just subtract that many bytes, I guess. Subtract that from DI, I'm assuming. Subtract DI word, cursor X, we'll try that. And we'll move this to 0. I'm just gonna do this. Maybe, yeah, we'll worry about that later. That's not gonna be right, actually. We'll just, we'll do this later. And we're gonna add to DI, but it'll be some number. Because we have to get the end of the line, which may be ending on a new line character, so I'm gonna do that later. So to do, but we'll move to the end, which should be 79. Okay. So to do's for home and end and up and down keys, but let's see if the left and right arrow key work. Right arrow press text is an undefined symbol. Is it now? Because I missed the D on there. Did I miss the D on all these? Oh, this one too. Anything else? Or is that correct? Check nav keys is not. Not defined. Check nav keys text. That's what I did. 439G. This. Oh, I called it hex. That's why. Hex. Okay. There we go. So let's do a new text file. Testing. Let's press home. Home goes there. End goes 79. So left arrow moves right one. And it'll go in the blanks even. Left arrow moves back one, or right arrow moves forward one. Left arrow moves back. So back beyond 0 goes there. It's because we don't have the other keys working right, but all right. So left and right work for the most part. Now I'm going to need like probably a variable for the length of the current line that we're on. That'll be updated. And we'll probably use that and go off that for checks. So let's put that down in our huge number of variables that grows by the minute. Put it as last, might as well. It'll be text editor, it'll be line length. I suppose. Right now it can be 0 to 80, so we'll just make it a byte. Maybe we'll call it current line length. Yeah, current line length. Put that there actually. Just change the indentation. But when we print out a character, let's update the current line length. This will be in a new file. When they print it out, they move the cursor one character forward. Let's update the line length. So increment a byte at current line length. All right. So if they enter in 10 characters, this should be 10, for example. Let's start with this. So instead of going to the end of the screen, let's stop at the end of the current line. So instead of this being 79, we'll compare word to byte value. That's not great. That's okay. Let's move that into AX. And then we'll compare AL. So we'll compare AL to, should automatically be a byte, current line length. So if we're at the end of the line, we don't want to go on, right? Yeah. If we get to the end of the line, we don't want to go on. Instead of going greater, we'll do equal. We'll just skip it. Oh, we don't want to go to get next hex character either. We want to go to... we don't want to do that. We want to go to input character loop. Yeah, that wouldn't be good either. That's probably why these things are messing up. All right, we don't have that anymore though. Okay, so we'll stop going right if they reach the end of the current line, which is however much stuff they typed in. Enter key we'll probably put down at the bottom. Okay, before we do that, let's test if that right arrow key stuff works. So testing, this should be 7, hold on, I'm on 7 or 8. Can't move right, I can move left, but I can't move right because I'm at the end of the line. So that's good. I know that's broken, but shouldn't be able to. Cursor X should be 0. Should only increase after they enter a character in. Oh, if it's less than 0, it's not less than 0, we want to do equal. And we don't want to do get next hex character, we want to do input character loop. Of course. So can't move right, and now can't move left. There we go. And Control-R works. Alright, so left and right should be okay, hopefully. Let's put in a new line first, to be able to put in multiple lines. Well, up till the end of the screen. I don't have anything for like scrolling past the current screen, so that'll come in the future sometime when it comes up. For more than one sector of data at a time, I suppose, but let's get new line code somewhere. I guess we'll put it down when we print the character out. I don't really think we want to print a new line, technically. We could, but we kind of just need to move the cursor and then data forward. Or well, yeah, the data in DI. We don't really need to print a new line character. I mean, interrupt 10 does with A80E. For teletype output, it does move the cursor down, but This, when we're writing to video memory and we're just pushing the cursor stuff, it doesn't really do that, so. But we will compare AL, I think it's D, right? For, it's either line feed or carriage return, but one of those sets off when you press the enter key, so. So we want to move stuff down one line and then go to the beginning of the line. So we want to do a CTRL-F, a carriage return and a line feed if they press the new line. Dot print. We'll use the dots here. We'll put print there. Otherwise, they did press enter. We'll move cursor X to the beginning of the line, and we'll increment cursor Y as long as it's not at the bottom right now. Well, we want to do it anyway. We'll just do it anyway. We'll worry about scrolling later, I suppose. We'll store it into DI and increment DI with store string byte. We'll put the 0D in, the literal carriage return in, I suppose. But that means when we load a file, we'll have to say, okay, we encountered these two. So I think what we're going to do is put in a CR and an LF. We'll just put in both. I know that's how Windows does it, and I like Unix a bit more, which I think only uses line feed, but we'll just do both for now. We can change it later, of course. So we'll store D. Well, actually, let's store A and then D. Let's do that. We'll move into DI, 0A. And we can do that, or, well, we can just move it to AL. We'll move AL 0A. And then store. And then move 0D and then store. So we'll store a carriage return and a line feed, so that if we load that later from the file, it should print out a carriage return and a line feed, I guess. And we'll jump back to the input character loop. And that'll also update the current line length to 0 after we do that. Because that line won't have anything on it after we do this. The other thing we'll have to change is if there's already data, if you're in the middle of data that's been loaded or that you input, you go up a line and you press enter. We want to enter a new line and then move the data below that, down. I'm not doing that either. I'll have to think about how to change that as well. Put full blank line on screen and move file data down. Okay, well, let's see if enter moves the cursor at least, which is what that's doing. So testing enter key. Nope, it does not. Oh yeah, it does. It just doesn't update. That's weird. Seems to work. Enter. It doesn't move the cursor. Huh. I'm not moving the cursor, am I? Yeah, let me move the cursor after I do that. That's why it's not moving. I gotta move the cursor. So testing enter key, take 2. There we go. Looking good so far. Alright. So if there were already data there, let's put in up and down and then go from there. So what am I doing for up key, down key? Subbing 27. So we will decrement Y to move up, but now I need to put in checks for cursor X. So if they move up and we're past the end of the line, we want to move back to the end of the line. Else we're good. We don't want to worry about that. So let's compare word cursor X to the current line length. I can't compare data to data, so we'll move that first. We'll move it into AX. Alright, and we'll compare AL to the line length that we're saving. So if we're at or past the end of the line, we want to move to the end of the line. If we're not, then we're good to go. So let's put a thing here that just says move. Okay, if we're good to go, we are less than or equal to the length of the line, right? If we're greater than, we want to move back to it. If we're less than or equal, we'll go to move here. If we're greater than, we want to make it equal, so we will move that into AL. Top of AX should be 0, but we'll ensure it is by doing this anyway. And we'll move that into cursor X. And then we'll go up. All right. We are not moving the file data, however. Okay, does that make sense? If the line above is shorter, we'll go to the end of the line. If the line above your current text when you press up arrow is fine, then we'll just go in. We'll just move up and not worry about it. So testing a longer line, we'll press enter. We'll go shorter line. So if we press the up arrow key, it should hopefully go to the N. And it does. Okay, down doesn't work. Well, down does work actually, but so we're on the shorter line. So let's go to a longer line again. So let's press up now, and hopefully it goes right past the E. It does not. Oh, because we're checking the current line length. We need the previous line length as well, maybe. We should probably maybe seek backwards through the file until we reach the last new line, and then go to the byte before that. And that should be the end of the previous line, I think. I think we'll have to do something like that. So let's do seek backwards through data for last new line. So we have a save DI, right? We can use that for stuff. Let's do a save DI. Let's move that off. Save current file data position. I don't know if we need to do this, but I'm going to do this, so. Let's make a loop, seek loop, or backwards loop, or whatever. So let's decrement by 1. Let's compare what's there to a new line. We'll do this the more manual way right now. Get the byte at DI, move it to AL. This might need to be ESDI, I'm not sure. We'll compare AL to the new line, or we're doing 0A and 0D when we enter a new line. So let's compare to 0A, because that'll be the first character of the new line that we stored. If we found 0A, then we need to go to the byte before the 0A, because that would be the end of the last line. Or maybe it ends on the new line. You know what I'm going to do instead of doing this? Because I'm stupid and don't know what I'm doing. Let's have three different variables. We shouldn't need one for every line in the file, but let's have 3 different ones. We'll have the current line, the previous line, and the next line. And if there is no next line, hasn't been entered yet, it should be, we'll probably update it to 0, but. So we'll keep track of this. If they've entered in at least 3 lines and they go to the middle line, then all these 3 should be populated. If they're on the first line of the file, we don't want previous line to have a value, it should be 0. If they're on the last line of the file, next line should be 0. Otherwise, hopefully we can update these 3 and go off this. When they enter in a new line, I'm going to update the previous line length to be the current line length. So save AL into current line length, we'll move that into previous. So when they press the up arrow key, let's just get rid of this stuff. We want to compare against the previous line length instead of the current line length. If you're in the middle of maybe you're on character 8, column 8 in the screen, and the previous line is only 4, it'll be greater. So it'll move to previous line length. We'll move that to the X. We'll go to the end. The previous line is now the current, so we'll move that. So if we go up one line, the previous line is now the current line, so we're going to move that into the current line length. But then the current would be the next as well. So we got to do that first, actually. Good old swapping going on. Move that into next, and then previous to current. So current to next, previous to current, because we're moving up one line in the file. Okay, and then I'm going to check cursor Y against 0. After it's decremented, I'm going to check if it's 0. Because then there won't be a previous line. We're at the beginning of the file. So if it is, we'll do not equal and put character loop. Okay. Okay, if it is 0, we can't go up anymore. Previous line length will be 0. It'll be byte, not word. Alright, let's see what that does. Undefined symbol, previous. I spelled it out. Yeah. So test line 1, test 2, test line 3. So if I press up, it should hopefully go to the 2. And it does. Okay, that's good. But then if I press down, I'll probably still go to the I here, but up should go to the 2. Okay. That's good. So let's look at the down arrow as well. I'll also put this here. This will be add. We want to compare to the next line, which if there is no new line or they just entered a new line on the new line, then it'll be 0. But we can still go to 0. So we want to check the current line against the next line. Do the same thing up here for the previous, but we'll check next instead. I guess there won't be a next line until we have a new line character entered to make a new line, so that's okay. Let's just do this. Let's just copy it all for now. That always works. So we'll compare where we're currently at to where we would be on the next line. If we're good, then we'll move. If we're not, then we'll move the next line into there, and then we'll move. So if the next line is shorter than the current line, then we'll go to the end of the next line. Otherwise, we'll go in the middle of it like normal. So we'll move next into current after this, instead of doing this. Next will be current. Current will be previous. Should be prev line length. Okay, so the current line we're on will become the previous line. The next line we're going to will become the new current line. So that's what this is doing. Down, we don't need to compare. Yeah, we do. We'll compare to 24 again. And if it's not, we're good. If it is 24, then we want to move and blank out the next line. Because we won't have a next line. We're at the end of the file. All right, so I don't need to do this anymore. So let's see what this does. Hopefully it's okay. This move, this dot move should be associated with this global label. It should be separate from this dot move, which should be associated with this label. So that should be okay. I think that's all we should need to do for up and down. Unless I have invalid operand because I didn't put anything in. Move previous line, what? Move AL into there. Of course. So we'll do line 1, line 2, line 3 is longer. So if we move up, we go down here. If we move up again, it'll go over here. If we go to the end of the line, which I can't do. I guess we're not updating it correctly. Oh well, if I go down, down, down keeps going. You may want to keep a running total of how many lines are in the file as well, which is useful for other metrics, like in Vim here, it tells you the line count. Control-G tells you the line count. So, well, I guess we can do that. File length and bytes. Do lines. We'll have it be a word right now. We can also do bytes, which will definitely be a word, if not bigger, but we'll do a word for now. So I also increased the editor to 3072, 6 sectors, because it overran 5 a while back. So I had to increase that. Mostly do the print hex, but I'm keeping that in there. So we want to compare word to file length, lines and bytes. Those are both word values, that's all right. Okay, so if we're at the end of the file, we don't want to move. Jump not equal, we're good. Otherwise, we don't have a next line, so don't move. Instead of 24, we'll compare, yeah, we'll do what we just did. Do add into file, yes or no. We are, don't worry about it. But we need to increment when we press a new line, so let's put that in. We need to increment the file length. Don't have that. Okay, so we should not be able to go down by default. And we can't. So test line 1. Still can't go down. Let's press enter key. Can't go down. We can go up. We can go down once. Can't go down anymore. Test line 2, longer. Well, backspace doesn't work. Alright, enter. Test line 3. So let's go up, down, can't go. Let's go to the end of the line. Let's go down. So that seems to work correctly. And then we'll go to the end of the line and go up. That doesn't. So, but down does, which is good. Okay, so continuing where we left off, it took me a couple days to kind of, work out schedule and debug things and run through them. It's still pretty buggy. Well, it's still kind of buggy, but I got the editor mostly working, the text editor for the arrow keys and home and end keys. So I'm just going to go over that and then try to, show it running instead of typing it out as I go along. It took me a while to debug. It would have taken way too long to edit down. It was like 5 hours. Not going to do that. So I changed some things, and I'll show the changes I did. So under new file text in the editor, I believe this is all the same. So I did this. I filled out a blank if we're doing a new file, I'm filling it out, pre-filling with blanks. So 256 words of null bytes, pretty much, of zeros. just so we make sure that there's nothing, you know, staying in memory from other stuff that may have been loaded before. If they do a new text file, we're blanking all of it out first, at least for one sector. Probably have to do more later. But for now, I'll just do the first sector. So I'm also initializing all these. I'm not sure if I have to, but I am, just in case they aren't. Just initializing di to point to the beginning of the file memory, and cursor x and y variables, our current, previous, next line lengths, and our file lengths. Just zeroing all those out before we enter in anything. Okay, load file text I didn't really mess with. So I haven't done backspace or delete yet. That I may not mess with, I'm not sure. I might do that in the future. But editor keybinds, CTRL-R is a constant at the top, Control-S is a constant. I believe I went over those. Check nav keys is the same, so left arrow. So what are we doing for the left arrow? So if we do like test line 1, test line 2, test 3, test 4, just have a shorter line, and test 5. Okay. So I got up and down working as well, I think, but left arrow basically compares if the cursor is at the start of the line, and the cursor is 0 based, so the first column is 0. So if we're at 0, we can't go left anymore. If we're not at 0, we can go left. And then I also update the file data as well with di. Di is also our pointer to file data that I'm using di as is also going to be 0 based throughout this whole thing. So di and the cursor are they're both 0 based, but the lengths, like current line length, previous next line length, those are going to be 1 based. So I had to work around that a bit. But left arrow pretty much works. Right arrow, I'm going to hold it down. I go to the end of the line. So right arrow, I compare wherever the cursor is, if they're at the end of the line. So I have to increment cursor x because it's 0 based. If I increment it, then it's 1 based like the line length. I could also decrement the line length by 1, but comparing the cursor to the length of the line, so this one would be, what, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, so 12. The new line character I'm putting on the end of the lines whenever you press enter. I put a line feed, a 0A byte, so it's tacked on to the end of the line. So visually we're on the enter key press here that created the second line, but comparing the cursor to the length of the line, if we're not at the end, we can press the right arrow. But this is the end of the line, we can't go right anymore. We can still go left, of course. So that's okay. All right, so up and down arrow took me a while to try and work something out, and they're not completely good. There's still some bugs, but I'm still comparing if the cursor is on the first line or not. You can't go up, so the up arrow won't do anything. Otherwise, we're on like the first line or second or third, whatever. We can go up, so up arrow works. Making the next line equal to the current line. So the length of the next line is going to be the current. So if we're going up, if we're on line 2 and we want to go up, see, there are still some bugs. I can't go past this. There we go, now I can. Sometimes it's weird, it takes a second to reset, depending on what line you're on, but so I'm trying to go up from the second line to the first. This next line here is going to be the current line length, and then we're going to get a previous. So I'm getting a previous length, the length of the line before the line you're on, and the length of the line after the line you're on, as well as the current line you're on. So if we move up, I want the line that you were just on, like the second line, to be the next line. So I'm moving next equal to current. So next is set to whatever this length is, the current line length. And then current we don't have, but we need to get the previous. Well, we have current, but we need to get the previous line length to know if we need to move to a shorter line or not. So here, test 4, this line is shorter than this one. So I wanted to move to the end of the shorter line, not just up, because there wouldn't be anything there in the file memory. So I'm starting at wherever the cursor is, which will be wherever, di is pointing. I'm decrementing di until I reach the new line character that I put in, which is just a line feed, a 0A. Decide to go the Unix way, just one single line feed in the file data itself. So I'm searching for that. So if we start like on here, I'm going to decrement, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that'll be the end of this line, which will be a new line. All right, let's say we're going up here. So the new line we entered would be in this space, so we decrement until we reach that new line. Okay, then we go down here, And we decrement again till we get to either the start of the file, which will be the beginning of the first line, or the start of another new line, which if we have 3 lines, or 4, well this will be 3, but this line 3. And we'd have a new line here and we'd have a new line here. So if I wanted to move up, we'll get this new line and then we'll decrement till we get the other new line, basically to get the length of the whole line that we're going to move to. If we find the start of the file, we've been incrementing the previous line length for every character we go back searching for. So if we find this new line, we go back to the other new line, we'll have the full length of this line. But we won't have the new line character included, and that is on the end of the line. We have to include that as well, so that's why I'm incrementing here one more time. And then I'm just moving, or well for the start. But I'm moving cursor X to DI if we're on the first line, because that would correspond with where the file data is. If we're on this, the 4th character, DI needs to point to the 4th character, so that's what that's doing. Okay, otherwise we're on not the first line, we just want to increment DI to get that other new line character, and then we'll add the cursor to that to get into the middle of the line if they move there. But this isn't working because this length isn't right. That is. Now it's correct. I don't know what resets the length, but so I still have bugs in here. But anyway, then it moves down here. So then we're making the current line equal to the previous line length when we move up. So new line is current. So if we move up to the first line, this line will be like the next one. And this line will be the current one, and then we won't have a previous. So I'm resetting that here. Then I'm checking the length basically. If the cursor is 0 base, convert to 1 base. If the cursor is less than or equal to the previous line, so if the previous line is going to be longer, then just move up. Otherwise we need to move it to however long the previous line is. So since this line is shorter, when I press the up arrow, well, ideally I'd want it to go there. So that's what that should be doing, but it's not. I'll go through and debug this more. I just wanted to record this first because I'm not going to do much more of this. I was getting really tired of it. So we're doing similar things as to the up arrow. We're just checking if we're at the last line of the file. You can't move down if so. All right, otherwise you can. That's why I can move up and down. So we blank out the next line because we need to get the length of, if we move down to this line, we need to get this length too to see if it's shorter or not. So I'm doing search forward loop. So I'm searching for a new line unless we begin on a new line. Like there, like here. If we start on the new line character, then I need to include that and go from there. Otherwise we're in the middle. We need to get the new line character and then start counting the length. If we're on the new line, we can just start counting the length from there, but that's all that's doing. All right, once we get that, we keep incrementing DI, and we also increment the length of the next line. So we iterate through and, basically go to the end of this line, get the length of that. And then we stop, and we move that into the current because we're moving down. So this is, the new length of the current line that we move to. Then we compare if it's longer or shorter. If it's shorter, then we'll move back. If it's longer, we just move down like we just did. And then to get the file data right, I'm subtracting the line length from DI. So, and then I'm incrementing and then I'm adding cursor X. So what this is doing when we move down, since we counted basically all the way to the end of this line, I'm just subtracting that from our DI to get to the end of the last line. And I'm incrementing to get to the start of this. And then wherever the cursor is at, that's where I'm moving the file data to here. So subtract, then increment to get to the start of the line we move down to, and then add the cursor to that to point to the correct area in the file data. Okay, and then we move the cursor. So up and down are still kind of buggy, they mess up. As you can see here, this I want to go to the end of the line, but it's not working. Seems to have taken line 1 there. That works, but line 3 is like broken now. And when I move up, 2 is broken until I move down from the first. But anyway, for the most part, if you don't move the arrows around a bunch, or you only go right and left and press enter, then you're good. So you can do write once code in this pretty easily, but beyond that you can't. So the other thing I did was home and end, which I think are a little less buggy. Home just subtracts cursor from DI, basically to go to the start of the line, and then moves 0. So if I press home, it goes to the front of the line. It moves the cursor there. If I press end, it does go to the end. So it puts the line length decrements because it's 0 base to compare to the cursor. So comparing where the cursor is to the end of the line and getting the difference. So if we are in like the middle of this, when I press end, we get the end of the line, which is the current line length. We subtract the cursor. So here cursor's at like position 5, although it's 0 base, so it'll be 4. And then the line length is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Line length would be 10 with the new line here. So 10 minus 5 would be 5. And then we're going to add 5 to the cursor. So that will move it to the end of the line. And then we're also adding that to DI to move it to the end of the line. So if we're in the middle, we're just adding the middle. If we're at like 2, then it would do 10 minus 2, which is 8, and it would add 8 to get the cursor over here and the file data to point to here. So that's what this is doing. And then we're moving the cursor. So end goes to the end, home goes to the front. That's pretty good. So when we print a character, and this isn't good either because I don't have code to handle the enter key. If you press like enter in the middle of this. But anyway, if we press enter in the middle of the line, I blank it out with a space, but technically in the file, this is an empty line. I'm not moving everything down visually, and I'm not moving the file data down. So enter is not really good. You can just use it when you first write it to delineate stuff. So I still need to work on that, but so far, this is if they don't press the enter key. If they do press the enter key, I'm putting a space where the cursor is. Okay, I'm moving down to the beginning of the next line with these two. I'm storing the line feed and the file data. And I'm incrementing the length of the file by 1, as well as the lines because we go down a line. And I'm moving the cursor. And then since we go down a line, the previous is now, the line we were pointing to is going into previous line length. And then we're blanking out the current one because when we press enter, it's a new line so far. This is a bad example though. All right, so test these, that's good. So we press enter, we make a new line. That's what this is handling. The line length is 0 at this point, but I added a new line to the end of the first line. Yeah, if we didn't press the enter key, then we're checking if there's any data there. So if there's already data here, like this A, and I override it with like a B, then the file will not increase. It'll just put a B there. But here, next to the B, there's nothing. So we put something in, it'll go to this insert statement. It'll store it and increment DI, and then increment the file length. And then it'll print the character. And then it'll move the character forward by 1 for regular. So cursor's here, now the cursor's here. Okay. So hopefully that made sense. I did not explain it very well, but I haven't had much time for this lately. You know, I keep making excuses. I apologize for that. I'm trying to work out better time schedules, but I am tired, and as you can probably hear my voice. And I had a nice time trying to get audio worked out better because it was way too compressy and way too boomy in the mic. So I got actual VST audio filters and OBS working, or plugins, whatever they call it, for compressor, equalizer, other things, noise gate and stuff. They should be better. Hopefully this sounds cleaner and not as boomy and in your face. Hopefully it sounds more natural than it did, just super compressed. And I also have the mic further from my mouth than I usually do, but so that's kind of how the arrow keys and home and end work. Up and down is still buggy. Left and right shouldn't be buggy though. Left to right and home and end should be okay. It's just my line length calculations aren't great. They're bugging out somewhere. So I'll have to figure that out. But on a basic level, that's what I've been doing the past couple days, is trying to get that working. But in the next part of this, probably try and implement loading and saving to disk. And then if I get that working okay for the text editor, loading and saving, then I'm going to move on to, shell commands, and then I'll move on from there. I'll come back to the text editor. I'm tired of dealing with it right now. So I'm going to you know, sleep on it, wait a couple days, come back to it, and probably try to debug stuff before going further. But in the meantime, I'll try saving and loading for the text editor, and then shell commands, and then other stuff. So thank you for watching.